Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 679, recorded the weekend of July 9th. I'm your host, Patrick. This week's screenshot, Goldilocks won Brontosurfs in the Isle of Dread in the 559th DDO screenshot of the week. Thanks for sending that one in. Nice little shot of Isle of Dread. It gives you a little bit of a feel if you haven't seen much of that. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, iTunes, or from our website at DDOcast.com. DDOcast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network, and shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show, we should have one next week. Actually working on Ask the Devs, so we might, hopefully, actually going to do two separate ones. With that, which will kind of carry over for a few weeks for our main topics and such. But that's kind of the plan of where we're going, and the show should hopefully, fingers crossed, get into a little bit more of a regular schedule. I know it's been a little touch and go the last couple months, just because of, hey, it's life. Things happen, things are going on. It's crazy. It's almost like the world is restarting and trying to cram everything in all at the same time. It's great. So, yeah, I've just been super busy with lots of various stuff, and some of that stuff's been hard to pin down and make predictable. But we should be getting a lot more regular and stuff. If you have ideas on things you'd like us to talk about for like topical discussions and stuff, that also helps. So feel free to send some of those in, either comment, email, anything like that. That's always actually really helpful because it tells me that's what people want to hear us talk about, and it gives me ideas on what to talk about, which can also be a barrier. The news has not been flowing freely of late, and have been struggling to come up with topics as well. So that's also something that can help us get things going and whatnot. In any case, we'll get into the game news for the last couple weeks. They have previewed twice now the new raid for Isle of Dread, Skeletons in the Closet, which, by the way, great name for a raid. Love that name. There are videos out there if you want to go and see it. I'm not going to really dive into it too much here because I don't really want to get into spoilers with that. But if you're interested in it, that is available for you to go and check out. We will, of course, do a raid topical, dive into that when it comes out as well. The Update 55.1 was released on Wednesday, June 29th. It was mostly bug fixy things. One of the big things with it was that the rare encounters that were supposed to be dropping the Black Pearls are now doing that. That's Stonejaw, the Mighty Hunter, Zardanareth, the Ruler of the Skies, and Vixorshal, the Deceiver, the Ancient Bound One. So they fixed that. Let's see, fixy stuff. They made a temporary fix to isolate an audio issue that may be responsible for player reports of random client crashes. If you experienced crashing before, try turning the sound back on once the patch is live and let us know if you continue to encounter an issue. This is under specifically the Isle of Dread section, the Wilderness area section. So I'm not, but it seemed to me like for a while that there's been some sort of like lingering audio issue. Like that's where the memory leaky thing happens, that it kind of keeps going, and that's where it kind of locks up a little bit. So I really wish that they would kind of maybe look further into that and see if that's not just an Isle of Dread thing, but like maybe that's like how people are getting stuck in load screens or something. I don't know. I just know that there's been seems like that there's an audio hang up for me occasionally. So let's see. Items. The tuned bone wraps now have their proper set bonus. Let's see. Dinosaur bones found in Isle of Dread are now properly unbound, which is great. The Shimmering Stones general vendor window now opens properly. And then they fixed some stuff. The quest Whispers of Return now has the correct treasure in their chest, so you can get the named items from there now. That's great. The Stone Crypt Chronicle. Players will no longer get locked out of returning to the mummy room when they use Dimension Door to leave the room prior to killing the mummy. Oops. Then the raptors in the quest All Hail the King now properly appear and attack. Where? I mean, great, make things work right, but where? I'm trying to think of where there's a spot where raptors weren't attacking. So, they also added a mailbox into the village of Tenora. There's now the bartender is now on the map as well, so you can find him a little easier. As an aside, a little bit of a confusing town. It's not the easiest town to navigate around. It's kind of spread out a little bit on different levels. Let's see. A map note was added for the NPC who takes places to the Isle of Dread. What? Takes you to places? It's Wolf Soulfork. I'm not exactly sure what that's trying to say. That's a weird note. Caneth Crafting. Level 31 and 32 random loot can now be properly dissolved for Caneth Crafting. They corrected a bug that caused level 25 and higher random loot to generate less than the intended amounts of Caneth Crafting essences. So that's great. And crafting levels 31 and 32 items now correctly makes them level 31 and 32. Hey, that's probably helpful. Enemies are no longer using an overpowered version of Comet Fall. Kopru Mindseekers now inflict chaos damage, which is impacted by magic resistance. I believe that is supposed to be their bubble attack, which is kind of this range thing. It's the Mindseeker attack, which they also corrected an AI bug where they were using their Mindseeker on close range targets. That's helpful. If you were in close range and they shot that at you, you're hosed because you didn't have time to dodge it. It just kind of hit you before you saw it. They also added visual effects to the Mindseeker attack. Saber-toothed tigers now properly sound like cats. I mean, I know it's a cat, but I mean that's kind of vague. Cats sound like different things depending on the cat, right? Quests that are base CR 30 are now properly considered legendary rather than epic. That impacts their ability to give you XP, legendary XP. The quest Black and Blue has been reopened, and a lever issue that caused its close has been corrected. It tells you what happened and why they closed it. Probably became uncompletable. An issue with destiny points not properly bestowing during legendary advancement has been fixed. That's good. It's kind of a key feature of legendary advancement. Let's see. Players can once again consume Reaper Wings and Eyes potions. Hey, that's fun. Lunar power in Magus of the Eclipse now persists through zone transitions. The Magus Null Magic Aura now functions correctly. Fate Singer and Primal Avatar's 4th Core now provide their epic DCs as listed. Monk's Air Stance no longer does a full screen overlay. I assume that's when you turn it on. It used to do that. That's kind of my guess there. Some level 32 yellow augments are no longer the wrong minimum level. And players can once again examine sentient gems, unslaughters, and sparks. And temporary hit points is once again visible in the party UI. Man, I was really kind of disappointed about. So they made it so you couldn't see the temporary hit points at all. There was no feedback for other players that you had temporary hit points. And now it's back to how it used to be. And I would really love it if they would kind of find the middle ground there. What I'd love to see is you can see their hit point number with the temporary hit points included, but the bar is still not full. Because it just makes it look like they don't need healing now, as opposed to that way you can see that they have temporary hit points, but the bar interface would show you that they need healing as well. Let's see, bonus days. There is a 50% guild renown boost through July 10th. Also, VIPs get a 10% VIP XP boost through July 13th. It's also your final weekend for double bonus points. You can get twice the bonus points through July 14th. Follow Your Passion is the sale. I believe it's a new one. 20% off of select enhancement trees, cosmetic outfits, cloaks, and hair dyes. So if you're looking for a tree other than the Harper Asian tree to go on sale, they're on sale because they don't come on sale very often because Harper Agent's in one of them, and that's like they don't switch it out or anything. Also, hey, summer sales are back. Special deals each week in July. This week, you can get 35% off of Sentience and Jeweler's Tool Kits, 50% off of Wish for Memories, 50% off of Monster Manual Volume 8. If you don't have it, that would be a great time to grab it. And 75% off of collectible crates and Canneth Essences. What a waste of a 75% off. All of that's through July 14th. You can also get 5 plus 20 potions of jumping with a coupon code MAKEU, the letter U, jump. So make the letter U, jump. Through July 14th. All right, that'll bring us. So some lightning posts. Some folks wrote in after our episode about the release of Isle of Dread. David said he loved the feel of Isle of Dread. Just the opening and public area reminded them of Kong Village with the giant gates from old movies. Some bugs for sure, but going to be fun to grind. Props to the few harder mobs in the Slaters. Yeah, the feel of Isle of Dread is pretty fun. It definitely has kind of that different vibe, kind of older. I agree, like Kong or Lost Worlds kind of vibe. Kind of that, not in a bad way, but kind of that like cheesy islandy feel. Like it definitely feels like its own thing, which is really nice. Little Lexi wrote in, left a comment. Always grateful for putting on the show. Also glad whenever Voodoo and Nimbin were on the show. It's fun to have them. They have a dino bone to pick with me for sort of hand waving the price point for Isle of Dread set at 3,995 DDO points as being par for the course. It most certainly is not. Ravenloft, Sharn, and Feywild are all expansions that are available in the store normally for 2,495 DDO points. Price for Isle of Dread represents a 1,500 increase in the store price, a completely unnecessary jump in my mind, particularly when you consider the precedent that was set by those previous expansions, not to mention factoring in all the other things we need to use our points for. Your bone is well picked, sir. Yeah, that... This is kind of just my general ignorance of pricing things because I don't tend to buy a lot of stuff. I have never bought any of the expansions for points in the store, and I erroneously assumed and thought that they were the same price point. Apparently that is not true, and Patrick needs to do more research in the future. So yes, your bone is well picked. That is definitely a significant increase. That is more than a 50% increase in price. I not know why you're having to spend that much more for this. That is kind of silly in my mind. I agree that is a big price jump. There is less content than some of those other expansions, so yeah, with you on that one. That's kind of crazy. They go on to Lexi goes on to say it's a massive barrier to entry to those who can't or don't want to get it on the DDO market. Can fully understand SSG wanting to incentivize people to get it with real bucks on the market rather than getting it with points. But as mentioned, there are already plenty of point sinks, and people buying it off the market are getting more than just the quest zone, which is all you're getting, which is all getting it via the store gives you, as well as 6 months of exclusivity. Kind of a lot. I didn't do the research on this any more than I did the price points. But 6 months feels about normal. For that. I mean, you don't like it, you don't like it. But I do feel like that's not terribly over what they've done in the past. Maybe they've done like 4 or 5 months, but I feel like 6 months has been pretty normal. Um, yeah, I mean, I think the bigger issue there is the ever growing propensity of SSG to have more expansions. We're getting expansion like every 12 to 18 months these days. And we've talked about how much content is locked behind expansions versus not these days. So if you're wanting to play the kind of the free to play route and not buy stuff in the store, uh, I think that's kind of more the issue here than the lockout part. Um, if you're gonna do an expansion, and I don't have a conceptual issue with it being on the market exclusively for a portion of time. 6 months, sure, that's kind of a fair length of time. A lot of people might kind of more or less be done running Isle of Dread within like 3 months, and then just kind of running it for something to run, not so much they're grinding it out. Plus, there's going to be, hopefully, fingers crossed, new stuff in the next 6 months. So there's definitely a question of how much that's gonna play in there. But yeah. This also means that some folks are not going to be able to group up with their friends and guildies in Isle of Dread for quite some time or ever, and guest passes tend to be unwieldy. Think it deserves consideration. Do they do guest passes for the expansions? I don't know that they do. I have to look at that. But yeah, 6 months is probably a lot. 4 months maybe might be better. I don't know. It's not a question I feel like I should be answering, since I get the expansions, and don't wait for them to come out on points. So, I have a very strong opinion there. All right. What I'm gonna do now is SSG put out a couple of videos of Cordovan was interviewing the devs, and we haven't covered them yet. And I wanted to make sure that we did cover them. So I'm going to do that now and just kind of give a summary of kind of the highlights of some of the different points there. There were 4 videos, and there wasn't a lot of necessarily new information. A lot of it was kind of about like how they were making Isle of Dread and some of that stuff. So there may not be a lot of surprises here. And as I mentioned before, the schedule's been crazy. This was kind of an easy thing to throw together for a show. It'll be a short show this week if you haven't noticed. Given that there hasn't been a lot of noteworthy news items and stuff to really kind of dive into yet. I promise Isle of Dread review is coming. That'll be a thing. Don't worry. So there's some topics coming, but needed something to kind of squeeze into this crazy weekend that's going on for me. So I wanted to kind of look at the videos here. There were 4 videos. Linabelle and Steelstar kind of took a dive into the process of creating the loot, as well as kind of some systemy stuff. There wasn't really anything new information-wise that I caught out of that. But if you're interested, if you haven't heard kind of their discussions before about this is the process of like creating named loot works, or kind of what some systems-y stuff works. They did talk about there wasn't a universal enhancement tree, which they just didn't have the bandwidth to kind of do something like that. They did briefly talk about Epic Destinies, and the system was kind of built with some more of that in mind, some more Destiny trees in mind and stuff like that. But there wasn't really anything new there. There was also a video with Nobob, who talked about building quests, and he actually kind of went through the process for making the Trials of the Triceratops quest. So if you're kind of interested in here's how quest development works some of the time, you can listen to that. Again, there wasn't really anything new or surprising information in there. But he did kind of go through how it worked for that quest, as well as kind of some challenges that they run into sometimes with quests, like making an outdoor space and having like a mountain in the distance, and how that kind of works out and how they make that happen. There was also, he talked a little bit about how the process for Isle of Dread was a little bit different than some of the other content packs, because they kind of had to make their own storyline here, as opposed to something like Ravenloft, where the storyline is very kind of segmented in there, and they have that information to pull from, and it's kind of like the inspiration for the pack is really kind of driving the story, as opposed to Isle of Dread, where they kind of had a lot more freedom to make that storyline for them. The third video was from Knockback, which was really kind of diving into the lore of Isle of Dread. So if you're interested in lore, you can check that out. He talked about the history of Isle of Dread kind of as modules and classic packs, and when that was coming out, and kind of what it looked like. He also talked about what's not in Isle of Dread that has historically been in Isle of Dread, and why they made some of the design choices they did, like Tabaxi. A lot of this stuff was kind of covered in. He did a write up earlier as well. It's kind of the same stuff, but he did go a little more into Vecna and why they kind of wanted to go into bring Vecna into the game, and kind of who he is a little bit, and he also made it pretty clear that this is just Vecna's introduction. We will kind of see him a little bit more. He did mention that the raid will not require flagging, and that the raid will also not. It will be, I'll say Vecna adjacent. So it doesn't. It's not going to be like we're fighting Vecna or something like that, but he will play a role in it. Is kind of what it sounded like. So that's kind of coming there. The video that was kind of more of the interesting stuff was the one with Severlin and Tolero, as you might expect. So they kind of talked about a lot more than just Isle of Dread, whereas the other three videos were very focused on Isle of Dread and what's in it. So they did, kind of talk about Isle of Dread and some of the decisions they made kind of going into it. But there's also some other stuff they talked about, which I'll kind of cover here. The first is that we should be expecting to get a producer's letter sometime this month. It sounds like is kind of the goal. Tolero wants to have the producer's letter be a more regular thing. There wasn't a commitment to like being biannual or every quarter or anything like that, but just like a more frequent communication tool. And I think she actually mentioned this in the last letter or somewhere else, but the idea here is that Tolero doesn't want the producer's letter to just be like once a year, and then like trying to prognosticate what exactly they're going to do throughout the whole year, and then they kind of get into this trap of, well, we didn't get to that, or our plans changed in the middle of the year. So having more frequent communication in that, one is just players tend to like that better, but also that there is they can be a little more focused and accurate with the letter and kind of what happens. So that should be coming soon. Hardcore Season 6 is expected to be coming later this month in July. That was also actually confirmed by Jerry on the forums. No hints on the theme yet, but it does sound like the theme is going to be... It sounded to me like the theme was going to be something new, so that could be fun and exciting. They talked a little bit more about Reaper trees. This was not necessarily new information, but they still want to kind of close the gap between players with lots of points and those with fewer points, with the idea that they still share power. A really big focus of this work would be to encourage and promote grouping. So someone with very few points wouldn't feel like they wouldn't be able to contribute in a higher skull group. And those people with a lot of points wouldn't necessarily have a problem, wouldn't feel like someone with few points is not contributing. Although generally speaking, I don't seem to see that as big of an issue as I think a lot of players might think. Um, Usually, I find that folks are just putting up LFMs and just they're not checking how many points you have or anything like that. I'm sure there's some stories of that happening, but I don't see that as being necessarily a big problem. But I do think some players maybe are concerned about being able to go into like 8 or 10 skulls, and because they only have like 10 or 15 points, something like that. So there is, I think that'll be great if they do it. Also, you mentioned that the trees are very performance heavy, and they're looking into they're still looking at going to a straight level system, not like not picking different points. It's interesting that the performance thing was kind of the new little piece of information there. So I'm sort of curious to see how that impacts things. Uh, I'm not sure if that is like a holdover from the idea that them loading on and off when you're going to the dungeons is the performance heavy thing, which they've actually fixed. At least from a player facing side of things. I don't know if that's still heavy on the system on their end. But it's interesting to me that they still consider them to be performance heavy. So I'm kind of interested to see where that goes. They talked a little bit about legendary leveling and what leveling future looks like. It sounds like Isle of Dread's increased level 32 was very much of a kind of a get their feet wet and see how players handle it. How fast are players digesting those levels? What does that kind of look like in terms of the landscape and the wild? They don't want to go too fast because they don't want to outpace the content that they have. Not to say that like there's a ton of content. It's legendary, like 30, 32. But they want to make sure that when we get to level 30, we're going to level 34. There's level 34 content, which there's not really a lot of right now. So that was kind of interesting. So that'll kind of probably determine a little bit of how fast. Like they refuse to put a timetable on when we'll get to level 40 or even level 34 or anything like that. But that they're still kind of gathering. They want to gather data about Isle of Dread's release and when the cap goes up to see what that looks like for players. They also did explicitly talk about legendary reincarnation as though it's a thing that is coming. I don't think this is any surprise to anybody, but it was, in the past they haven't really talked about reincarnation as a system for legendary reincarnation. Whereas in this interview with Cordovan, they definitely were saying like when this comes, we're not saying what this is going to look like, but we want to like this is a thing that is coming. Was really kind of the language they were using there. They did talk a little bit about cosmetic storage. They've mentioned before that they're looking to revamp the storage system for characters and make that a little cleaner and also allow them to add more storage for a character. One of their big, they didn't necessarily use this language, but we'll just say, quote, fixie things with cosmetic storage is the expansion bundle stuff. Saltmarsh and Isle of Dread, a NPC, quote, holds on to the stuff for you. So you can go talk to them and get another copy, even if you've already gotten one in the past. So that's one tactic they're using. They've made all those bound to account, so you can just make a new character and get them. They are also looking at going back to previous expansions and converting it into that system as well, so that you just go and get the bundle stuff from an NPC instead of having it just pile in your inventory when you create a character. The point in which you have the least amount of inventory space. So I like that. Hopefully we'll see that happen. That might come eventually. They also talked about when they do kind of create the new storage system, that there might potentially be a bucket to put your cosmetic stuff in. Cosmetic items are just like and I think this was kind of more about the glamored items than the ones that come in the expansions. or from the store ones, the ones that are already like made, as opposed to like the ones that you use a mirror glamoring to pull that information from something. Those items are for some coding reason really big, and reference other things. So putting them into a bag is just kind of untenable. They'd have to do a lot of engineering work to make that happen, and stuff still might fall off of them. They might lose information, which would not be great. So that's sounds very unlikely. But they're looking at other ways to kind of mitigate this problem, including giving us more storage. So yay. Then they also talked about guilds. There is definitely a desire to touch guilds some more, and give things to do with leveling guilds, more things for guilds to acquire and get. Hey, there's still airship slots that are not filled. And geez, they redid the airships like 6-7 years ago now. I don't remember, but it's been a while. Someone talked about this as an engineering problem and needing more engineering capacity. However, they are almost done hiring more engineers. I think there's someone that's already hired but hadn't started yet as of the time of the video. So they're ramping up their engineering capacity, and one of the things that he wants to put that capacity towards is guilds. So we might see some work there in the near future, which would be great. I personally hope that they come up with something that, even if you're a capped guild, that you have some reason to get and acquire guild renown. Maybe not as much as someone as a guild that's leveling, but I think it's kind of a bummer when you don't need guild renown anymore. So I kind of hope that they do something with that works towards that a little bit. That'd be great. I think so. All right, so that's kind of just a quick rundown of the videos. Like I said, it's going to be a short show today. A lot of stuff going on, but I wanted to make sure we got a show in because I didn't get one in last week because of things and stuff. But that's the show this week. If you'd like to support the show, you can visit our website at DDOCast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. If you have a DDO-themed webpage or you Twitch DDO and you'd like to be featured on our website, you can email us at DDOcast@gmail.com. We can do that for you. You can also hit us up at DDOcast.com for our show notes, MP3s, our calendar, previous shows, and other fun stuff, including playing DDO. Hey, DDO Splat will be coming back at the end of the month. Also, D&D Tabletop. We're playing through Tomb of Annihilation. It's been a lot of fun so far. And there's even some other games. If you have a comment in this episode, a question you'd like to hear us answer, a topic you'd like us to discuss, hey, always need new topic ideas, or you just want to say hi, you can leave a comment or you can email us at DDOcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media and follow us for the latest cast updates at DDOcast on Twitter is the best place. So thanks for listening. Always appreciate that. So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chests level appropriate. Have fun, and don't forget to gather for buffs.